I think the ethos at Planned Parenthood and in the reproductive health community in general, I spoke with another clinic director out, not a Planned Parenthood, an independent clinic. And, she had the attitude that this is about bodily autonomy. And, if we believe that girls, once they are old enough to get pregnant, are able to decide that they want to prevent pregnancy, we should also respect the autonomy of young people to tell us who they are and that they need testosterone or estrogen. And that seems to be the governing ethos right now.
Welcome to the Unspeakable Podcast. I'm your host, Meghan Daum. If you're a liberal-leaning person who came of age in the post-sexual revolution, post-second wave feminism era, Planned Parenthood may be as sacred an American institution as you can think of. I guess next to NPR, Apple Pie, and, NPR. But like many hallowed liberal institutions, Planned Parenthood has been going through something of an identity crisis in recent years. Much of it centered around its involvement in medicalized gender transition for young people, including teenagers. This past August, my guest, Jennifer Block, published an article in the Free Press entitled, "How Did Planned Parenthood Become One of the Country's Largest Suppliers of Testosterone?" The article followed the story of a teenager who visited her local Planned Parenthood and was fast-tracked into medical transition and then surgery that she almost instantly regretted. According to insurance claim data, in less than a decade, Planned Parenthood became the country's leading provider of gender transition hormones for young adults. And in this conversation, Jennifer explains just how that happened. She also joins me in wrestling with the various dimensions of how to square this with Planned Parenthood's original mission. This is a premium episode. That means that if you are not yet a paying subscriber, you're going to hear a portion, and then you're going to want to join our listener community, become a paying subscriber to hear the rest. I should also tell you that if you are a member of the Unspeakeasy online community, the Unspeakeasy is, of course, my free thinking community for women, Jennifer is going to be joining us on Monday, October 14th as an unspeaker. That means she will Zoom in and have a private off-the-record conversation with our members. To join the Unspeakeasy, go to theunspeakeasy.com. In the meantime, here is my conversation with journalist Jennifer Block. Enjoy. Jennifer Block, welcome to The Unspeakable.
Hi, Meghan. Thanks for having me.
So listeners know that I do a lot of conversations here about the new gender movement, particularly about young people seeking medical transition. We also talk a lot about a lack of faith in institutions that certain segments of the population, call them nice liberals, once deeply trusted, if not deeply loved, the ACLU, NPR, certain gay rights organizations. But I think arguably none are higher on that list than Planned Parenthood. I grew up seeing it as synonymous with thriving for women, a thriving world, really. But as you've recently reported, it's in some ways not the organization it was 20 years ago, or maybe even 10 years ago. You recently published a story about that in the Free Press. But before we talk about that story, I was wondering if you could describe your own relationship to Planned Parenthood. What did it mean to you growing up and also as a grown-up woman?
Well, I think like many women in the US, Planned Parenthood was a haven growing up. A good friend of mine went to the Planned Parenthood to get an abortion when she was 15. And, it was the place where, you could always walk in and, you had an embarrassing symptom or, you didn't want your parents to know about something, you knew you could go there and get it taken care of and get your contraception and abortion, obviously. I mean, I did clinic defense in my 20s, put on the yellow vest or the orange vest or whatever, and, rallied and marched and, I've written checks and, I've had that kind of relationship with Planned Parenthood since I was young. Though I also, as I started reporting on women's health, I did understand that Planned Parenthood activists in the women's health, in the feminist health arena have a problematic relationship, or let's back up and say it's a love-hate relationship with Planned Parenthood.
I definitely want to get into your work around women's health and hormonal birth control and a lot of what you just described. But, by way of getting into this piece in the Free Press, it's framed around a young woman named Christina Heinemann. She lives in New York's Hudson Valley. Tell us about her.
Christina is now 20 and wanted to emphasize to me that she is not legally able to buy cigarettes yet. She was coming of age right as the pandemic hit, as everything locked down. She, had already understood that she was attracted to girls. She had a girlfriend at the time, and she seemed to be doing, pretty okay. But then the pandemic hit, lockdown. She was very isolated, couldn't see her girlfriend, couldn't see her friends. And I've interviewed other parents of young women in this cohort. There seems to be a strong kind of archetype in this community of young female-born trans-identified people who, were sort of stuck in their rooms during lockdown on the internet. And Christina described to me how, as she started exploring what her sexuality meant, she really came to believe that this also meant she needed to look at her gender and, well, wait, am I like, I didn't think I wasn't a girl, but am I a girl? Do I feel like a girl? And that led to her, starting to identify as non-binary, and then agender, and then trans-identified masculine. She was developing, she was getting big boobs and having bad periods, and all this sort of added up to her, by 17, deciding that she absolutely had to have a mastectomy. She just did not feel comfortable in her body, was convinced that she was trans, and she really actually wanted the mastectomy more than anything else. But you really have to kind of go on a path before you can get that, for being trans. So she made an appointment at Planned Parenthood. I think she wanted it for her 18th birthday, actually, but she had COVID, so she couldn't have it then. But she told me that, nobody asked questions. I know, everybody knows, everybody online knows that Planned Parenthood's where you go when you just want to walk in, get hormones, and not have a hassle
Okay.
as an 18-year-old.
Right. Okay. So, and I want to understand if this is true, like across the board at Planned Parenthoods. Does it, vary according to region, and what are the age cutoffs? But before you answer that, can you describe Christina's family? Like, were they supportive? How much did they know about what was going on? Did they at any time take her to the family doctor or a pediatrician or anything like that?
Christina's family is, a liberal, accepting family. And so her sexuality was not at all a problem. And in the Hudson Valley, it's not that far from New York City. And you do see Trump signs, but you also see lots of rainbow flags and in this house signs. And, there are lots of cafes with rainbow flags. It's not a place where, that was anything that was a problem for her. But she was having a lot of mental health issues. So in case I didn't mention that in the description before, she was already having some issues before the pandemic, and then they just spiraled during lockdown. And so she was dealing with severe depression and anxiety, and she was getting therapy. They had gotten her into therapy. And at one point she was actually admitted to an intensive program that would have been like a day program in person where she spent the whole day there, but because it was COVID, it was remote. But so she was essentially, partially hospitalized. So that was a few weeks. And, but her parents, especially, she talks about her mom, were very skeptical of medicalizing gender. So they were, her mom, I think, talked to her a lot about, her concerns about taking testosterone that could have permanent effects, and especially she was very concerned about her getting a mastectomy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the parents in this case, it sounds like they were at least a little bit aware of what was going on in this world with gender, because a lot of times you hear these stories and the parents are totally blindsided. Like they haven't heard about any of this. They think that the trans movement is sort of gay rights 2.0, and they're going
Right.
to go to the right clinicians and providers and do whatever those people say. But it sounds like the mother was at least a little bit savvy as to what was going on, or at least just had her own intuition.
Yeah, and I didn't get a chance to talk to her mom. She really wasn't interested. So I can't speak for her and what her influences were there. But she definitely came to this not with the attitude of, oh yes, let's, we celebrated that you are attracted to girls. Let's celebrate this now and get you everything you need. That was not her attitude.
Okay, so let's talk about Planned Parenthood. Like, I have these conversations a lot on this podcast and I talk with people all the time. And, part of the challenge in dealing with all the complexities of the gender issue and also talking to people about it who may have different levels of information and understanding is that, you say, like, oh no, don't you understand? Kids are going into places like Planned Parenthood and getting puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones without any, after 20 minutes of consultation. And for starters, that sounds crazy. Okay. Like,
Yep.
on its face, it's very hard to believe that's happening. And it's also like unclear. Are we talking about people who are under 18, over 18? Are we talking about this happening in New York and Massachusetts and in Texas and in Virginia? Like, what are we actually dealing with? So,
Okay.
before we get into Christina's story, because she is in the state of New York and she is in a particular kind of environment, like, what is actually happening at these different kinds of clinics, especially Planned Parenthood, like, according to region?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I want to make this really clear. Kids are not walking into Planned Parenthood and getting puberty blockers,
Okay.
as far as I can tell. And I do think that is a bit of a rumor on the right that I've heard said in various X spaces. And so I don't think that's true. Based on my reporting, I found that they actually did try to pilot a family centered youth gender medicine program that was going to, that was trying to bring in families of kids younger than 15 with their parents, but it didn't go anywhere. So my sense is that, that's not what's happening. There are about 440 something clinics, according to the Planned Parenthood's own search function, that offer gender affirming care. I cannot tell you exactly how many are 16 plus and how many are 18 plus, but not all of them are 16 plus. In fact, I'm guessing that most of them are 18 plus, but I don't know. And they did not respond to me. So I can't tell you that. But there are, 400, almost 450 clinics out of their nearly 600 is a great majority of their clinics that have adopted, the service. And they did write the service guidelines into their, they have national guidelines that they follow. So any affiliate that wants to offer this is, they have the guidelines. They can start doing it whenever they want to. Regionally, I can't. We could go on the search function and look. We could like narrow
Makes
it
for great
down.
radio.
And you
Yeah.
can. I can. You could put it on the show notes or whatever. You could pick a city and then pick the radius and see how many are there. I didn't go that far, but the laws that have passed have mainly applied to under 18. So that's not really going to affect their decision. And for example, the medical director who I quote in the piece, she is from the North Central States region, which includes Idaho, I believe, and Minnesota, and so a smattering of states with various politics, and they're offering them. I think you could see, like, if I were able to track historically, like, which offered them first, I think it would, track with the blue states, but it's pretty widespread at this point. And so what I know best is the experience of an 18 plus person who can walk in as an adult. They're, assessment is basically, how are you identifying? Have you, there is a question, have you had any mental health, issues or intervention? Checkbox, checkbox. They have to screen for like 3 other, issues that would absolutely contraindicate hormones. But one is pregnancy. I mean, they're very rare. So as far as I can tell, based on the intake forms and the consent forms and the guidelines, there's just very little reason why they would deny someone.
Okay.
And that's backed up by other internal documents that I've seen.
That was a taste of my interview with journalist Jennifer Block about her August 7th article in the Free Press entitled, "How Did Planned Parenthood Become One of the Country's Largest Suppliers of Testosterone?" To hear the rest, become a paying subscriber at meghandaum.substack.com, or just go to Substack and look up The Unspeakable with Meghan Daum. That gets you 2 entirely extra bonus additional episodes per month just for you. I have unpaywalled a lot of the episodes, but paying subscribers are going to get actually even more, 2 bonus episodes. I should also tell you that if you're in the Unspeakeasy community, Jennifer will be joining us on October 14th as an unspeaker, so you can go to theunspeakeasy.com to find out about that. In the meantime, just so you know, Jennifer Block is an independent journalist who writes frequently about health, gender, and contested areas of medicine. Her articles have appeared in the Boston Globe, the BMJ, the New York Times, and many other outlets. Her 2007 book, Pushed, led to a wave of attention being brought to the national crisis in maternity care and is a foundational text in university curricula and birth worker training. She's also the author of the 2019 book, Everything Below the Waist: Why Healthcare Needs a Feminist Revolution. You should really just hear the rest of this conversation. Go to meghandaum.substack.com. I will be back next week with another super nuanced guest. Thanks for listening. See you then.